LSC conducting a group generally is very good at it. And they had told him that he was in the normal group. He was very clear. He'd been an engineer all his life. He was retired. He'd been in his late 60s, maybe just around 70. He'd been retired for a few years. He felt that he had retired because he could no longer do his job. He took age-based retirement. He didn't take disability. He also had been a bridge player all of his life, and he had recently stopped playing bridge because he knew that he was screwing up, and the people that he played bridge with were carrying him and sort of covering for him, pretending that it didn't matter. So he had these kind of real-world complaints. And there were some other things that were going on in his life that were sort of indicative of, but maybe less clearly conclusive of it. He had actually been tested 2 or 3 times by the Diagnostic Center, and his scores had been pretty low on 1 or 2 of several tests he was given as part of the neuropsych manual, and were progressively lower at the repeated testings. But the overall pattern still didn't meet the criteria for putting him in a group, so they were still telling him that he was normal. And it actually took me quite a while to convince the student who was doing the therapy of this, but because she didn't want to think that he was demented either. The client was the only person who was convinced. But it actually ended up becoming kind of an important part of the therapy to get the neuropsych workups and to go over it with him and to talk about the total pattern of reasons why the answer probably was yes, and why people still saw him as functioning at a pretty high level. And it actually helped him get over his depression. It's actually been one of the things that's always puzzled me over the years is how many people feel good about getting an Alzheimer's diagnosis. Because you think it would be like really terrible news, on the surface. And but people like having an answer and having a name for what's going on with them. There were dementia diagnoses. One that I found the oddest was occasionally had people say things like, "Thank God it's Alzheimer's disease. I thought I was going crazy." And I'm thinking to myself, crazy we can fix. Alzheimer's not so good. Okay, if you feel better, that's great.
What about other tests? Like I mentioned, the clock drawing test or the animal naming test?
Yeah, those are all used. A lot of people feel like if you're only going to do one thing, clock drawing would be the thing to do.
Yeah. Professor Hagedorn this week or last week or something. I can't remember. I'm taking 3 classes. I can't remember one from the other. You guys are all a blur. But he was teaching us.
He's taller.
Same age group. But he was teaching. He was teaching us that they're not using the MMSE so much anymore, and because they're not finding that it's actually helping so much, that there's more of a failure rate. I can bring you in his seminar.
I haven't seen so much change. Have you read the show?
Using clock drawing instead of MS?
Or just MMSE falling off?
No, I think they use it a lot.
Still used.
But I don't know.
I mean, a lot of people people like things like the clock drawing test because a lot of people think like the MMSE is too long and too complicated. And coming from the other end, the psychometric assessment is always, first of all, it just seems like a really short, you can do it with, most people are really low, so you can do it in 15 minutes and be high of about 30. But people want really simple tests that are going to answer really complicated questions. And I think that's just fundamentally wrong. And so I've never liked any of the one test kinds of things. So So just for that reason, I'm not a clock growing fan. Even though it may well be true that if you're only going to do one thing, that might be the thing to do, but I don't think anybody should only do one thing. I think you should worry even if your one thing is like MSc. There's a free MSc version that goes up to 90 that usually has a bit of discrimination and some other things. One of the reasons people were starting to back off of the Holstein for a while was that after being like out in the public domain for like 30 years, he sold it to a publishing company and they started trying to charge people to use it. I don't know if that's still going on or not. It seems very fishy legally to me. I've never heard of anybody taking anything out of the public domain. I think, once the barn door is open, I think it's gone. But they were like suing the VA system to try to get the VA to pay $1 a shot for using the I think that's where some of the thinking about maybe it's not being used. And there's some push for more complicated tests because of the better we've gotten at diagnosing Alzheimer's disease and other dimensions of late life, the more push there's been for earlier diagnoses. And for all the reasons we've been talking about, that gets really hard. But the answer to that wouldn't be the Folstein, but it also wouldn't be the clock growing test. It's going to be something much more complicated, longer, unless we find the golden piece of thing that changes with dementia, not with normal aging. It's really reliable, which I sort of doubt. You never know. You might also get a biomarker someday. The biological researchers say we're 2 years away from a biomarker and 5 years away from treatment. But I've been hearing that since 1980. That could still happen. I mean, when we get a treatment, it will happen suddenly.
Yes.
It'll probably be something like, it'll probably do for Alzheimer's disease what the L-delta drugs did for Parkinson's. Although, we had a guy here like a couple of weeks ago that was talking about his approach to the whole vaccine for Alzheimer's thing. Something like that happened. It would change the face of aging. And it would do it pretty quickly. He wasn't saying 5 years. It could happen in you guys' profession. Something could happen any day. Or you might be sitting around 30 years from now saying, I remember Dr. Knight saying in class that people were saying we were 5 years away from treatment. Okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Next week we have Martin Gatz and probably 1 or 2 of her doctoral students coming over to talk about depression and